listen closely, and picture me as a somewhat older soul, having traversed many roads and wrestled with my share of crossroads. I invite you to join me by the glow of a gentle lantern, its light flickering upon the leather-bound pages of age-old texts on philosophy, particularly the works of the Stoics, who, for centuries, have offered a methodical path to self-mastery amid life's swirling uncertainties. Today, we delve into the secret to making tough life decisions, those moments where you stand on a precipice of choice, uncertain whether you should leap forward or retreat, whether you cling to old comforts or dare to embrace new realms. The question we explore is this: can there be a guiding compass, one that cuts through emotional storms and quiets the roar of external pressure, so you can see your path with calm clarity? Through the lens of Stoicism, and through other resonant philosophies that champion the unity of rational thought and moral conviction, I suggest that yes, such a compass can be forged within your very mind. The journey to forging it, however, demands introspection and a willingness to confront illusions about what you can and cannot control. Now, if you are new here, please like the video and subscribe. Statistics show that only 15% of my audience is subscribed to the channel, so if this content has helped you in any way, I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let me begin with a bold hook, as is often the best approach. What if I told you that, in all the complexity of life's biggest choices, the real secret isn't finding the right option, but rather training your mind to discern what truly matters? This, in essence, is what the Stoics repeatedly hammered home, reminding us that while external goods, money, status, comfort, have their place, the greatest determinant of a sound decision is alignment with virtue and reason. Suppose you're choosing between two career paths, or weighing whether to relocate your home and family, or deciding whether to end a long-standing relationship that no longer serves the deeper parts of you. The tension can feel overwhelming. Friends, family, experts, and random strangers on the internet might each offer conflicting advice. Meanwhile, your heart tugs in a direction that your mind might question, or your logic suggests a route that your emotions resist. The Stoics, ancient though they may be, present a framework for cutting through this confusion, one that centers on identifying what lies within your sphere of influence, clarifying your highest values, and acting accordingly. Let me anchor that in a quick anecdote. In my youth, I faced a decision that, in hindsight, shaped much of my future. I was torn between pursuing a stable path, one that promised a decent livelihood and the respect of the community, and venturing off to study abroad under a fairly uncertain scholarship, with no guarantee of success. I spent weeks in a paralysis of analysis, writing pros and cons, asking everyone for input, losing sleep. Finally, an older mentor, steeped in Stoic logic, posed a simple question. Which path, if it fails, would you still look back upon without regret, knowing you acted out of reasoned conviction rather than fear? His question flipped my perspective. I realized that while I worried about finances and other trifles, I was ignoring the deeper issue: my longing for intellectual challenge and the self-knowledge that would spring from taking a risk. In the end, I chose to travel, and though the journey had hardships, I never once lamented the choice. The Stoic principle hidden in that question was that your highest calling is to live aligned with your deeper values, what the ancients might call living in accordance with nature or reason. When faced with tough decisions, if we let fleeting anxieties overshadow that alignment, we cheat ourselves of growth. Now, let me set the stakes of our conversation. The world is full of distractions, illusions, and external pressures that can hijack your decision-making. You might find yourself swayed by the opinions of people who don't share your moral compass, or you might chase ephemeral security over a calling that resonates with your essence. The cost of repeatedly making choices that betray your authentic values is subtle but deep. A gnawing sense of dissatisfaction, the suspicion that your life's script is being dictated by social expectations or anxiety, rather than your own convictions. Or, conversely, you might be so impulsive, acting from fleeting passions, that you never weigh the long-term consequences, stumbling from one drama to another. The Stoic approach sees both extremes as misguided. On the one hand, we mustn't ignore the rational dimension of a choice, carefully measuring what's within our control. On the other hand, we can't hush the voice of our deeper calling, for that is where genuine purpose stirs. The secret is forging a synergy between reason and principle, listening to logic while honoring the deeper moral demands of your soul. You might ask, how can the Stoics possibly help me with the countless modern dilemmas I face, from career transitions to personal relationships, from deciding whether to keep forging ahead with a failing enterprise to choosing whether to stand up for a certain cause that might cost me popularity or comfort? Let me point you to the core Stoic insight. While you cannot guarantee outcomes, you can direct your intention in accordance with virtue and clarity, thus ensuring that, however things unfold, you remain at peace with your choice. Marcus Aurelius lived in a time of war, plague, and the swirling politics of an empire. Yet, day after day, in his private meditations, he reaffirmed the fundamental Stoic approach to decisions. Do what reason and moral duty prescribe. Accept that external events may or may not align with your wishes, and never let fear of adversity or public opinion overshadow the right course. This stance is deeply empowering, because it frees you from the crippling notion that you must predict or control every factor. Instead, you harness what is truly yours, your capacity to judge, to weigh, and to act in good faith. So, in the next segments of our journey, I'll lay out a narrative approach to making tough life decisions under the banner of Stoic and related philosophical insights. We'll explore how to identify your bedrock values, how to differentiate illusions of obligation from genuine responsibilities, how to weigh competing goods, and how to handle the regrets or second-guessing that might follow a choice. As always, I'll refrain from bullet points or rigid structures, preferring the flow of a thoughtful monologue that, I trust, will keep you engaged. My aspiration is that by script's end, you carry with you a set of mental tools, a guiding lamp that can light up even the darkest crossroads. But let me first clarify why you should bother listening to me. I speak as someone who, for many years, has blended Stoic reflections with experiences gleaned from personal successes and failures. I've watched men remain stuck in ruts because they fear the unknown, or cling to illusions of safety, or simply never developed a method for evaluating complex decisions. I've also seen men leap into choices purely from emotional impulse, leading to avoidable crises. Through countless nights reading Seneca's letters, analyzing Epictetus's lectures, and pondering the diaries of Marcus Aurelius, I gleaned a consistent thread. That tough decisions become clearer when you filter out external noise, anchor yourself in reason, and measure your path against the moral or purposeful dimension of life. This is not mere theory. The Stoics themselves lived in times far harsher than ours, making decisions under threats of war, exile, or public disgrace. Their framework isn't some naive positivity. It's a tested approach to navigating chaos with a stable mind. You should care about this because tough decisions define the arcs of our lives. A single, well-chosen risk can open doors to profound fulfillment or service, while a timid refusal of that risk can lead to slow-burning regret. A single, principled stand might cost you comfort, yet bestow you with unshakable self-respect, whereas a compromise of principle for immediate gain might erode your identity. In an age flooded with contradictory advice, Stoicism cuts through the chatter by asking one basic question. Does this choice align with your rational, moral core, or does it arise from fear, vanity, or mere external pressure? So, if you value a sense of personal integrity, if you aspire to look back on your decisions with minimal regrets, Stoicism offers a path to making tough calls with a calm mind. Let me underscore a final note about the nature of these tough life decisions. They can vary wildly in scale. Some revolve around career. Do you remain in a stable job that dulls your spirit or leap into the unknown of a new venture? Others revolve around personal commitments. Do you marry or remain single, or end a partnership that's grown toxic? Still others revolve around deeper moral dilemmas. Do you speak out against a wrongdoing that could jeopardize your safety or comfort? Or do you stay silent to preserve your immediate status? Regardless of the domain, the Stoic approach remains consistent. Gather relevant facts with reason. Reflect on what's truly within your control. Clarify which virtues or core values are at stake, then act decisively, accepting that the future is not fully ours to shape. By doing so, you preserve that stoic calm, knowing you made the best choice your reason and moral sense permitted, free from slavish fear or ephemeral enticements. Now, let me outline how we'll move forward. In this first segment, we've set the stage. I've introduced the theme of tough life decisions, the Stoic vantage on why they matter, and the promise that Stoic logic can serve as a compass. Next, in the second part, we'll delve into the process Stoics and like-minded thinkers might use for evaluating a choice, clarifying your highest goods, discerning illusions of necessity, pausing to identify whether fear or vanity distorts your perspective, and using negative visualization to test your readiness for potential outcomes. Then, in the final portion, I'll explore how to handle the emotional aftermath of a big decision. The swirl of second thoughts, the interplay of regret or relief, and the continuing Stoic practice of learning from each turning point. Woven throughout, I'll share stories from historical figures and from my own experiences, illustrating how these principles come to life in real scenarios, not just in theory. At the heart of it, this script is a single conversation between me, an old traveler of Stoic terrains, and you, a traveler facing or anticipating those critical forks in the road. Whether you're deciding to shift careers, move across the country, stand up for a cause, end a relationship, or pivot your entire life philosophy, the Stoic approach bestows clarity. But I caution, it demands honesty, which can be uncomfortable. You must be willing to see through the illusions that keep you safe but stagnant, or that lure you into reckless leaps without measured reflection. Stoicism is not about being fearless or reckless. It's about discerning which fears are illusions and which leaps are truly worth taking, all while grounding yourself in the conviction that you cannot fully control external results, only your intentions and moral stance. Thus, with the tone set and the guiding question posed, how to decide when life's choices become tangled in uncertainty, we can proceed to unravel the Stoic method in a stepwise narrative. But do keep in mind, While I'll illustrate how these principles might apply, real mastery emerges from your own daily practice. Like a craftsman, you must test the Stoic approach on small decisions, like whether to skip a tempting short-term pleasure for a long-term gain, before it can reliably guide you through the grand crossroads of life. Over time, your mind becomes more practiced at filtering out noise, zeroing in on virtue and reason, and letting go of the illusions that cause inner turmoil. We shall then begin by describing in detail how to identify your core values and separate them from the ephemeral opinions that swirl around you. For a Stoic approach to tough decisions always starts with an inward look. Do you truly know what anchors your sense of purpose, or are you drifting on the currents of fleeting desires or societal pressures? That is where we must go next. Let us move forward, carrying the lamp of Stoic reason to illuminate each step, so that by the time we finish, you'll hold a sharper sense of how to face life's hardest forks with composure and confidence. Take a seat with me once more, and let us journey deeper into the heart of decision-making through a Stoic lens. In our previous discussion, we set the stage by recognizing that tough life choices often overwhelm us precisely because they pit multiple desires or fears against one another. Here we begin our deeper exploration of a practical Stoic method for navigating these crossroads with reason and poise. Think of this part as entering the inner chamber of the Stoic approach, a chamber where we gather the tools of self-inquiry, negative visualization, and clarity on our highest values to ensure that our decisions resonate with who we are at our core, rather than with fleeting impulses or the clamor of external demands. Picture a quiet moment. The world beyond your window hums with its usual concerns. Commerce, chatter, headlines that flash by, acquaintances calling for attention, urgent tasks piling up. Meanwhile, in the stillness of your own mind, you face a pressing choice. Perhaps whether to shift careers entirely, to accept or decline a major opportunity, or to uproot your family for a fresh start in a different city. The pressure is real. You sense that each option could shape your life's course. Yet all the advice you've gotten only tangles your thoughts further. You find yourself hesitating, vacillating, or anxiously forcing yourself to pick something so you can stop the swirl of indecision. But that swirl only quiets if you approach your choice with a method that extracts illusions and centers on essential truths. In the Stoic tradition, and in many allied philosophical perspectives, the first step is to identify your bedrock values. Without this foundation, you risk drifting, letting convenience or others' opinions drive you. But how do you do so? Well, imagine listing all the qualities that deeply matter to you, whether that be honesty, a sense of purpose, growth, service to those you care about, or a longing for creative expression. Write them or reflect on them in a calm environment. Indeed, the Stoics themselves often retreated to quiet spaces for contemplation, stepping away from society's bustle. Once you see these values spelled out, you can ask, which of these is truly at stake in my decision, and in what ways? Because each major choice typically touches on more than one value, some in synergy, some in conflict. Consider a scenario. You might have, on one hand, an opportunity for higher salary and prestige that demands you relocate your family abroad for 2 years. On the other hand, you might have the path of stability, staying near extended relatives. Which is right? A Stoic would say, weigh not just external gains, but how each option upholds or undermines your deeper convictions. Do you hold family closeness as a principal good, Or do you sense that personal growth and the chance to secure financial resources could serve them in the long run? Is there a tension between your desire for adventure and your duty to an elderly parent who relies on your proximity? By identifying such tensions in the realm of your personal values, you gain an honest vantage on the trade-offs. That vantage is crucial, because illusions often arise when we fail to articulate what we truly prioritize. We might let short-term excitement overshadow a more pressing moral or relational responsibility. Or we might let anxiety push us to settle for less than we are capable of. The Stoic lens clarifies that while external outcomes remain uncertain, your responsibility is to choose in alignment with reason and virtue. If your family's well-being is your top priority, that might steer you in one direction. If your quest for knowledge or financial stability can ultimately benefit them, then that might tilt you in another. But the choice is guided by a deliberate way in, not by defaulting to whichever possibility imposes less fear in the moment. Next, we bring in the concept of what the Stoics call the dichotomy of control, distinguishing between what you can directly influence, your own judgments, actions, and intentions, and what lies beyond your direct control, such as the economy's fluctuations, other people's preferences, or sheer chance. How does this help in decision-making? Well, once you see a tough choice before you, gather the relevant facts and determine what portion of the outcome truly rests on your ability to act wisely. For instance, if you're deciding whether to launch a new business venture, you can control the research, the planning, the skill sets you bring, and the effort you invest, but not the market's whims or unforeseen events. The Stoic approach is to channel your energy toward what you can do well, preparing thoroughly, building the needed support structures, ensuring your values guide your business model. You accept that success is not guaranteed, but that you can face the risk with a clear mind. This perspective dissolves some of the anxiety that paralyzes us when we face big decisions. Instead of trying to foresee or manipulate every external factor, an impossible task, you direct your focus to your own readiness and moral stance. If, after thorough reflection, you see that your plan aligns with virtue and is well prepared, you can proceed. If not, you can adjust or pivot. As Marcus Aurelius might say, the rest belongs to fate's domain. That acceptance fosters calm, and calm fosters sharper thinking. Often, the dread of an outcome we can't fully control leads us to inaction or to frantic second-guessing, which ironically sabotages our best efforts. The Stoics would counsel, do your part with unwavering commitment, then let go of the illusion that you can script the entire future. In modern parlance, it's akin to focus on the process, not the outcome. But Stoicism wraps this in a moral dimension, underscoring that the process should reflect your highest ethics and reasoning. A small anecdote. A friend once agonized over whether to propose a radical change to a project at his company. He could carefully gather data, craft a pitch, and present it persuasively, but he worried the higher-ups might reject it. For weeks, he hesitated, stalling the entire department's progress. A Stoic mentor pointed out that it was within his control to do the necessary research, refine the proposal, anticipate objections, and present it with clarity. Whether upper management accepted it lay in their domain. Realizing this, he found the courage to proceed. Ultimately, they turned him down, but ironically, his initiative impressed a different division head, leading to a new role that let him implement aspects of his idea. Had he never attempted it, he'd have remained in stagnant frustration. Third, with your values clarified and the scope of your influence delineated, the next Stoic tool is negative visualization. Imagining potential negative outcomes in a calm, deliberate way, so that if they come to pass, you're not blindsided, and if they don't, you're gratefully relieved. For tough life decisions, this is extraordinarily useful. Suppose you're torn about leaving a familiar job to pursue a personal venture. Try visualizing in detail how it might feel if the venture fails. If you find yourself short on funds, if you have to return to the job market, or if you endure the embarrassment of a public flop. The point isn't to scare yourself into paralysis, it's to defang that fear. By examining the possibility of failure rationally, you might see that it's not the end of the world, that you could adapt, learn, re-enter your old field with new experiences, or downsize your lifestyle for a time. Once you see that the worst-case scenario, while unpleasant, is survivable and perhaps instructive, your fear loses some of its power to distort your judgment. Inversely, you might also consider positive possibilities, though Stoic caution reminds you not to cling to them as certainties. By imagining the best outcome, maybe your new venture blossoms, you discover new strengths, your family thrives in the new setting. You glean the potential rewards that might make the risk worthwhile. The Stoic stance is never to guarantee you'll land that dream scenario, but to weigh how much you're willing to accept the potential downsides for that chance at a greater alignment with your deeper aspirations. The result is a balanced view that neither sugarcoats nor catastrophizes. I once used negative visualization when contemplating a significant personal move, relocating to a distant city with a different climate and culture. The fear of leaving behind my comfort zone loomed large. By calmly imagining how I might handle homesickness, how I'd reestablish my social connections, how I'd manage if job prospects took a downward turn, I began to see each worry was addressable. That mental rehearsal of adversity lowered my anxiety and bolstered my readiness. In tandem, I also considered how thrilling it could be to immerse in a new environment. The Stoic approach, thus, let me approach the final choice with level-headed determination. I was not naive about the challenges, nor crippled by them, because I'd already visited them in my mind. Next, let's address the emotional or social noise that often drowns out reason. When you face a tough choice, countless voices might swirl around you, friends urging caution, experts championing certain methods, well-meaning relatives pushing for security, or perhaps critics dismissing your aspirations. In the Stoic tradition, while we do heed wise counsel, we remain the final arbiter of our decisions. As Epictetus frequently insists, external opinions can be considered but not allowed to overshadow our personal judgments about what is right or aligned with virtue. So, how do you handle the tidal wave of advice and commentary? The Stoics would recommend first filtering it. Who among these advisors truly knows your context and your values? Who might be projecting their own fears or regrets onto you? And who might be stirring your ego or vanity, perhaps tempting you with illusions of status? By sifting through these external voices, you glean insights that are genuinely relevant, while discarding noise that merely reflects others' biases. The Stoic emphasis on introspection clarifies that, in the end, no matter how many weigh in, you alone must inhabit the consequences of your choice. Therefore, it's a Stoic practice to find a quiet interval, be it an hour, a weekend retreat, or a daily reflective pause, where you step away from the chorus of opinions to sit with your own reason and conscience. Let the counsel swirl, but let your final judgment emerge from your inner well of values and rational analysis. That doesn't mean you ignore wise mentors. It means you weigh their input without ceding your autonomy. Allow me a small story. A colleague had a chance to buy a small property to start a local enterprise. His extended family insisted it was a foolish risk, citing economic instability. A couple of entrepreneur friends egged him on, claiming it was a gold mine. Torn between these starkly different opinions, he spent weeks in confusion. Eventually, he turned to a Stoic exercise. He wrote down precisely what his intention was: to build a small, community-oriented business aligned with his passion for sustainability. Listed the data on property costs, local demand, potential adversity, and then measured each piece of external advice against his personal values and the actual facts. He discovered that some warnings from his family were valid, but overshadowed by their personal fear of any risk, while some hype from his entrepreneur buddies was inflated. He concluded that the project was feasible if approached with moderate scaling and realistic projections. By following this Stoic sorting process, he made a calm, well-reasoned choice. No longer a ping-pong ball between extremes. We now arrive at a crucial step in Stoic decision-making: testing your willingness to pay the price for your chosen path. This is a question the ancient philosophers rarely shied from. Are you prepared to bear the cost of your conviction if adversity strikes? If you decide to uproot your family and move overseas, are you ready for the potential strain on relationships back home, the cultural adjustments, the possible financial stretch? If you decide to remain in your safe job, are you ready to accept the potential restlessness that might follow a missed opportunity? The Stoics see such acceptance as integral to clear-minded action. For to act while ignoring potential sacrifices is naive, and to obsess over them to the point of paralysis is self-defeating. The sweet spot is acknowledging them, ensuring they do not breach your deeper values, then proceeding if your choice remains valid. In plain terms, if you can't accept the cost, you shouldn't pick that route. If you do pick it without acceptance, you'll be plagued by regret or shock when the cost surfaces. Stoic reflection encourages you to ask, if the worst aspects of this path do manifest, could I still hold my head high, knowing I acted in alignment with reason and virtue? If the answer is yes, your mind relaxes into the choice, and you find a bedrock of equanimity. If the answer is no, it signals either a need to reevaluate the option or to shape a contingency plan. Indeed, one might recall that the Stoic generals of antiquity never marched their armies blindly. They prepared for the possibility of defeat or adversity, but marched anyway if reason and duty demanded it. Let me share a personal reflection. When I faced a decision to stand up for an ethical concern in a public forum, I knew it might cost me professional alliances or cause some to view me as difficult. Negative visualization helped me see that, yes, I might lose certain supports or face personal attacks, but I concluded that my deeper moral alignment was more precious than those potential repercussions. A Stoic sense of dignity demanded that I address the wrongdoing. So I accepted the cost. The fear subsided because I had mentally rehearsed the fallout. And ironically, some who initially opposed me later came to respect the stand I took, though it wasn't guaranteed. This again exemplifies Stoicism's capacity to transform potential anxiety into purposeful resolve. VIs. We must also confront the emotional fog that arises post-decision. The moment you commit to a difficult path, a new set of doubts can surface. What if I chose wrongly? What if I missed a simpler route? Stoicism helps by reminding you that if you made your choice with thorough reflection, guided by your values, acknowledging what you can and can't control, and prepared for possible outcomes. Then second-guessing is a fruitless self-torture. Indeed, once you act, it's best to channel your energy into executing that choice as well as possible, rather than repeatedly scanning alternate realities. If new facts emerge that truly warrant rethinking your course, by all means, adapt. But don't gnaw at yourself with regret or suspicion simply because the future remains uncertain. That tension kills your focus and robs you of the Stoic peace you earned through careful deliberation. Epictetus would say that once you commit to a path, muster your mind to walk it steadily. If, for instance, you decide to launch a business, you do not plague each day with, "Oh, maybe I should have stayed an employee." Instead, you direct your Stoic discipline to refine your business model, to handle obstacles proactively, and to accept the unknowns with fortitude. Should the business falter for reasons beyond your control, you remain at peace because you chose it rationally, not on a whim, and you gave it your best. This acceptance is the hallmark of Stoic maturity. You do your utmost, accept the outcome, and preserve your equanimity either way. Moreover, Stoics address the fear that a different path might have been better. They remind us that you never truly know how the unchosen path would have unfolded. Perhaps it harbored its own hidden pitfalls. Much suffering stems from romanticizing roads not taken, conjuring illusions that they would have been smoother or more glorious. The Stoic cure is to see that such speculation is guesswork, and that living in guesswork undermines your actual life. Instead, your priority is to inhabit the present choice with full attention, gleaning the lessons and achievements you can from it. That's a direct remedy to the trap of the grass is always greener on the other side. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day," so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic Mindset 7. Let's consider now how all these Stoic steps might unify into a single cohesive process. Suppose you're on the brink of a life-altering decision. Maybe it's about drastically changing your lifestyle, or adopting an entirely new career. You'd begin by clarifying your top values: personal growth, family stability, honesty in your craft, or perhaps your faith or an overarching sense of purpose. You weigh each path's compatibility with these values, acknowledging conflicts. Next, you demarcate what is in your control: your willingness to learn, your savings strategy, your capacity to network, your skill set. You see that you can't foresee global economic shifts, but you can plan for some contingencies. Then you practice negative visualization, conjuring the worst plausible outcomes, letting yourself feel how you'd cope, how you'd adapt. You do the same for the best plausible outcomes, balancing your perspective. At this point, you may gather input from mentors or loved ones, but you sift their advice through the Stoic filter. Does it help you see reality more clearly, or does it reflect their personal biases or fears? You integrate what's valid, discard what's not, or at least hold it loosely. Then you check your readiness to handle the cost. If, for instance, it means reduced comfort for a while, Are you prepared for that? If yes, you proceed. If no, you refine your plan or reconsider. Finally, once you decide, you commit wholeheartedly, refusing to be haunted by second-guessing. You carry forth an attitude of, "I have chosen in good faith, aligning with my reason and moral stance, thus I will see this through with diligence." Should new evidence later arise, Stoicism allows you to pivot, but never out of mere emotional whim. This method might sound structured, yet it needn't be mechanical. Indeed, Stoic thinkers recognized the fluid, human dimension of choice. You might not sit down with a spreadsheet or do bullet points, but the essence remains. Reflect on your values. Separate your domain from external chance. Face potential adversity in your mind's eye. Weigh advice with discernment, then act or revise as needed. The calm that arises from such steps is potent. You sense that your decisions flow from an integrated, reasoned perspective, not from panic or fleeting desire. If you do falter along the way, and all of us do at times, the Stoic approach is to learn without undue self-flagellation. Each tough choice becomes a forging ground for your character, whether it leads to external success or not. Wait, we should also speak of a nuance. Stoic decisions are not purely cold or emotionless. The notion that Stoicism kills emotion is a misunderstanding. The Stoics valued the synergy of reason and moral clarity, acknowledging that emotions can be signals. Fear might indicate real danger, which you must address rationally. Excitement might reveal a path that resonates with your deeper calling. The key is not letting these emotions hijack your process. Instead, you gather them as data, interpret them, and see if they align with or contradict your best understanding. In practice, you might discover that your excitement about a new idea stems from a genuine match with your values, or that your fear is purely about social judgment, rather than a moral or practical hazard. Then you can incorporate or dispel these emotions accordingly. In fact, a Stoic might say that a decision suffused with a sense of deep joy or purpose can be a sign of synergy with your higher nature, provided it's not overshadowing rational caution. Conversely, feeling dread might be a sign you're about to betray your values or ignoring a crucial piece of wisdom. The Stoic method is never to shut out these emotional cues, but to place them under the scrutiny of reason. If, after calm evaluation, the emotion aligns with virtue and the real circumstances, then it's a supportive force. If not, it's an emotional illusion to be transcended. 9. Another dimension, the role of second chances or smaller stepping stones. Sometimes a tough decision can be reframed as a series of smaller choices that let you test the waters. Stoicism doesn't require you to leap blindly. It often advocates a measured approach. If you're uncertain about a massive leap, can you attempt a pilot version of your plan, glean insights, and then escalate your commitment if it resonates with your deeper ideals? This approach honors the Stoic preference for wise adaptation. However, beware that in certain pivotal moral matters, like standing up for your principles or ending a toxic relationship, there might not be a gentle middle ground. In those scenarios, you rely on your introspective clarity, your sense of right and wrong, and the acceptance of potential consequences. Stoicism trains you to neither fear nor desire external outcomes to the point of moral compromise. You see that living with hypocrisy or quiet self-loathing eventually exacts a heavier toll than any external cost. X. Lastly, let us consider the synergy between this Stoic decision-making method and what we might call the big picture of your life. Over the years, you'll face multiple tough decisions. The Stoics urge you to notice patterns. Do you habitually avoid risk even when your spirit yearns for challenge? Do you cling to illusions of security only to find yourself stifled? Or do you chase novelty so incessantly that you never cultivate deeper roots or follow through on your commitments? By examining the recurring themes in your major choices, you glean insight into your default biases. Stoic practice helps you correct these biases over time, fostering balance between prudent caution and bold pursuit. If you often regret not taking leaps, Stoicism might embolden you to do so, anchored in reasoned acceptance of risk. If you often find yourself in fiascos due to impulsive leaps, Stoicism might temper that impulse with thorough reflection. Epictetus once said that the discipline of desire is crucial, meaning training yourself to desire what truly enriches your character rather than illusions. This discipline applies not only to everyday temptations, but also to the big decisions that lure you with external luster. If an option glimmers with vanity or social praise but violates your deeper moral code, Stoicism would counsel you to see it for the hollow temptation it is. Conversely, if a less glamorous path resonates with your virtues, you'd be wise to follow it, even if it lacks immediate applause. Over time, making decisions through that lens accumulates into a life guided by authenticity, steadiness, and moral fulfillment. What Stoics call eudaimonia, a flourishing state not determined by external circumstances, but by the rectitude of your choices. Let me share, in concluding this second segment, a personal reflection on a moment when Stoic logic guided me in making a deeply challenging decision. Years back, I was offered a prominent public role in a local council that promised recognition and potential influence to help the community. Yet the environment was known for politics and compromise that sometimes veered from ethical lines. Meanwhile, I had the choice to remain in a quieter, more autonomous capacity, focusing on direct mentorship and writing. The public role carried the glitter of authority, but also a risk of moral entanglements that might conflict with my Stoic ideals. I spent weeks applying the method, clarifying that my main values were sincerity, the freedom to speak truth, and a desire to serve without engaging in manipulative games. Then I recognized that, while I could attempt to bring Stoic virtue to that council, the environment might hamper my ability to remain faithful to my ethics if constant political maneuvering pressured me to compromise. I performed negative visualization, imagining the toll on my peace if I got ensnared in underhanded deals. I saw I'd face potential backlash or alienation if I refused to partake. Could I accept that cost? Possibly, if I felt sure I could shape real good. But on reflection, I concluded the position offered limited scope for meaningful reform, overshadowed by an entrenched system. My circle of control was too small. So I let the prestigious post pass me by, focusing instead on direct mentorship in the local community and crafting philosophical texts that might enlighten those who read them. The relief upon making that choice was profound. I'd parted ways with something that many labeled a missed chance. Yet, stoically, I saw it as preserving my integrity and better aligning with how I believed I could serve. Years later, I have no regrets. That's the essence of Stoic decision-making. It might not lead to conventional applause, but it yields a deeper consistency between your heart and your actions. Thus, we end this middle section, having laid out the Stoic method for tackling life's crossroads, clarifying values, focusing on what you can control, employing negative visualization, filtering external advice, testing your willingness to bear the cost, and finally acting with resolve while relinquishing obsessive attachment to outcomes. By weaving these steps into your reflection on any major choice, you elevate your decision from a swirl of impulsive anxiety to a reasoned stance in line with your moral center. And even if adversity follows, you'll face it as a Stoic, calm, adaptive, unwavering in your sense of having done the best you could with honest awareness. Next, in the final part, we'll approach the aftermath of tough decisions, how to handle regrets or unexpected hurdles, how Stoicism helps you adapt if external events shift drastically post-choice, and how you keep refining your skill at making decisions through repeated practice. We'll also underscore how Stoic reflection on your decisions can yield a quieter mind, less battered by the regrets or what-ifs that plague those who never anchor their actions in this synergy of reason and virtue. For now, let your mind absorb the framework we've discussed. Perhaps you already sense how applying it to your pending dilemmas might liberate you from the usual swirl of fear or confusion. Such liberation is part of what the Stoics call real freedom, the freedom to choose in harmony with your highest self, unconstrained by illusions or the misguided clamor of the world. Let us begin this final stretch with a simple scene. You have chosen your path. Perhaps, after deep reflection on your core values, you decided to quit your stable job in pursuit of a new venture, or ended a relationship that had weighed on your spirit, or relocated to a different city, trusting in your ability to adapt. However large or small this decision, you sealed it with the Stoic clarity we discussed, balancing reason, negative visualization, awareness of what you can control, and alignment with your deeper aspirations. But now, the real test begins. How do you handle the emotional aftermath that can unfold once a major choice is made? How do you deal with lurking regret if the outcome isn't as bright as you'd hoped, or with unanticipated adversity that tests the sincerity of your conviction? Stoicism, as always, does not promise a frictionless path. It offers a compass to steer you through the storms that follow any consequential leap. In this concluding portion, we shall explore precisely that: the Stoic approach to persevering after the moment of decision, refining your ability to adapt, and preserving the calm assurance that, though external events may shift, your foundation in reason and moral purpose remains firm. We can start by picturing a scenario in which your chosen road leads to immediate difficulty. Say, you left your job to start a small enterprise, but early sales are underwhelming, or a key partner withdraws unexpectedly. Fear or panic might begin to whisper, "What if this was a mistake? I should have stayed where it was safe." The Stoic lens encourages you to reassert your fundamental logic. You recall why you made this choice, the values it served, the illusions you dispelled about having perfect knowledge of the future. You remind yourself that adversity was not just possible but anticipated. Stoic negative visualization had braced you for the notion that these exact struggles might arise. Rather than crumble, you mobilize your energy to solve problems within your sphere of influence. If the adversity proves insurmountable, Stoic acceptance helps you shift or pivot without sinking into self-reproach. What Stoics repeatedly stress is that regret or despair post-decision often springs from illusions about guaranteed success or from a false sense that another road would have been painless. The moment you hear yourself thinking, "If only I'd chosen differently, I'd be at peace," Stoic reflection steps in to challenge that fantasy. Could you truly be certain the alternate path would have been free of challenges? Often, we compare our real difficulties to an idealized version of the unchosen path, which is never tested by reality. The Stoic correction is to see that such comparisons are guesswork. Instead, you focus on your present reality, addressing the issues that have surfaced, mindful that your original choice was made in the best faith with the knowledge at hand. Consider the Stoic concept of amor fati, the call to love or embrace one's fate. This doesn't mean you blindly adore every hardship, but you see adversity as an integral part of your journey, forging growth. If your new city feels isolating at first, or if your changed relationship status yields unexpected loneliness, Stoicism says, acknowledge your sorrow without labeling the entire choice as wrong. Indeed, your sorrow might be a call to explore new social circles, to rely on your resourcefulness, or to engage more deeply with your original purpose for moving. Over time, this approach fosters resilience. You do not recoil from the friction that emerges post-choice. You interpret it as the natural terrain of forging a new path, trusting that your capacity for reason and adaptation can surmount it or find new equilibrium. Another central Stoic principle relevant here is that the line between success and failure may be murky, or it may shift over time. A decision that appears to fail in the short term can yield intangible rewards in the long run. Suppose you championed a moral stand at your workplace and got overlooked for a promotion as a result. In the short term, it might feel like a defeat, fueling regret. But if you hold to your Stoic vantage, you realize that preserving your integrity was the higher good, and that perhaps new doors open in places you never expected. The Stoics often highlight how inner consistency with virtue stands above the ephemeral labels of success or failure that society doles out. You might eventually discover new opportunities or allies who value your conviction. And even if those do not arise, the Stoic mind rests easier with the knowledge that you lived according to your moral code, unbroken by external pressures. Yet let us not pretend the mind always remains perfectly calm in adversity. The Stoics themselves wrote about how negative emotions can surge unbidden. If, after a tough choice, you experience bouts of anxiety, anger, or doubt, the Stoic technique is not to repress them, but to examine them. Why does this emotion arise? Which illusions is it feeding on? If you find that your fear stems from a belief that everything must go smoothly, or you have failed, Stoic reflection clarifies that your real measure of success is whether you acted in alignment with reason, acknowledging the risk. If you find anger simmering at some obstacle or at people who didn't support you, Stoic logic reminds you that their actions are beyond your control, that bitterness only corrodes your peace, and that you can instead focus on constructive solutions or boundaries. In this way, each emotional wave becomes a chance to reaffirm your Stoic stance rather than an excuse to abandon it. I recall a conversation with a friend who had relocated overseas for a new job, only to discover that the work environment was more challenging than expected, and local customs took time to adapt to. He felt pangs of regret, telling me, I should have stayed in my hometown. Together, we walked through the Stoic analysis. Had he not studied the pros and cons thoroughly before leaving? He had. Did he anticipate cultural differences? He did, but perhaps not their depth. However, Stoic negative visualization would have taught him that cultural friction and transitional loneliness were likely. So, these current difficulties didn't prove that the choice was flawed. They simply confirmed that adversity is real. Over the following months, he practiced immersing himself in the new culture, forging local connections, and gradually mastering the language. As time passed, he found his stride. The earlier regret vanished, replaced by a sense of growth. That's the Stoic pattern. Initial hardship needn't negate a decision's validity, so long as you approach that hardship with a willingness to adapt and a memory that you chose this route for reasons still dear to you. Now, there are times when new evidence emerges, compelling you to revise or even reverse your decision. Stoicism in no way forbids that. If, for instance, you discover that the city you moved to has systemic issues that undermine your well-being more severely than you anticipated, or the project you initiated is entangled in deeper ethical conflicts than you realized, you might weigh the data anew. The Stoic approach then has you ask, does continuing down this path still align with my values and the reality at hand, or is it best to pivot? That pivot is not a sign of indecision if done after reasoned reflection. Indeed, Stoic adaptability honors the truth that the world remains in flux, and so must our strategies. As Epictetus would note, the wise man does not stubbornly persist in a harmful course to defend his ego. Rather, he changes course if that shift is demanded by updated insight, always grounded in the deeper moral center. Let me share an example of Stoic pivoting. I once started a collaborative project with a group of acquaintances, believing it matched my desire to create something beneficial to our community. Over time, signs emerged that some members were veering into ethically questionable territory. Initially, I tried to rectify the matter from within, hoping to realign the group with our stated ideals. But the more I probed, the clearer it became that the group's leadership had different motivations. My earlier decision to join them had been sincere, but new facts upended the assumptions on which it was based. A Stoic reflection told me I was no traitor to myself if I backed out. Indeed, I owed it to my ethical stance to separate. So I withdrew, explaining my reasons calmly, and accepted the cost of losing that partnership. Could this be seen as a wrong decision in the first place? Stoicism would say no. It was correct at the time given what I knew, and once the truth changed, I had the reason and courage to pivot. That is how Stoic logic ensures we remain fluid without being fickle, faithful to our moral compass but never enslaved by the pride that says, I must remain for consistency's sake, even as it violates my conscience. So, to unify these ideas, after making a tough choice, you sustain Stoic composure by expecting challenges, rechecking your alignment with your chosen path, welcoming new data that might prompt adaptation, and refusing to swirl in hypothetical regrets about roads not taken. If adversity overwhelms you, you calmly evaluate whether you can mitigate it through your own actions. If you can't, Stoic acceptance steps in, reminding you that your internal stance remains free, that you can respond with dignity even if the external scenario falters. This interplay creates a dynamic approach to living, one that yields resilience. A Stoic never claims total control over outcomes, only over his readiness and moral stance. That, ironically, fosters a certain quiet boldness. You become more willing to attempt meaningful undertakings because you've embraced the reality that success is not assured, but can be pursued with a tranquil heart. It's worth pausing to connect this Stoic method with broader existential or spiritual frameworks. Some find parallels in Buddhist teachings on detachment, Christian ideas of trusting providence, or modern mindfulness practices that reduce anxiety by focusing on the present. But Stoicism's distinct flavor is the emphasis on moral self-governance and the notion that each decision is an opportunity to practice virtue. The Stoics would say, If you remain mindful that your decisions should honor your capacity for reason, empathy, and courage, you transform each crossroad into a chance to shape your character more fully. Even a so-called negative outcome can be a victory in that sense, because you've honored your integrity. That's a subtle but profound shift from a typical success-failure mindset. You become less fixated on gleaning trophies or pleasing the crowd, more devoted to forging a soul that stands upright. In the final stretch of this discussion, let me also speak of the practice of reflection after each major decision has ripened. The Stoics frequently recommended an evening review, not just for daily minor actions, but also for the bigger arcs of your life. After some months or a year, you might ask yourself, how did that momentous choice shape my inner state and my external life? Did it confirm my Stoic reasonings, or did it reveal a gap in my earlier judgments? If I were to face a similar decision now, what might I do differently? That is not regret in the sense of tormenting yourself, but a constructive post-analysis that polishes your decision-making craft for the future. Epictetus taught that we cultivate virtue by iterative practice. So you glean the lesson from each major turning point, storing it in the repository of wisdom that readies you for the next fork in the road. This cyclical refinement leads to a life where tough decisions, instead of being dreaded, become avenues for self-awareness and moral growth. You start to see that you cannot live a meaningful existence if you constantly shy away from decisions with real stakes, or if you make them haphazardly. The Stoic path is one of balance between caution and boldness, always anchored by principle rather than by fleeting emotions or illusions of total control. Over time, your confidence in the method grows. You realize that though uncertain outcomes remain part of life, your mind can be a steadfast rudder, steering you through the waves. At times, friends or acquaintances might marvel at your equanimity when facing high-stakes crossroads. They might wonder how you remain so unruffled while confronting challenges that cause others to panic or vacillate endlessly. If asked, you might quietly explain that you follow a practice of aligning decisions with reasoned virtue, letting go of what lies outside your power, and never clinging to illusions of guaranteed success. You don't posture as a Stoic sage, but you embody a measure of that calm in your daily walk. Perhaps this might even inspire others to explore these philosophies, discovering for themselves the calm vantage they can bring to the chaos of modern life. Let me share a closing anecdote that encapsulates this entire arc. Many years ago, I encountered a man well into his 50s who'd spent decades in a corporate environment. He disliked it, but feared leaving, so each day he told himself it was too late to change. Then a health scare awakened him. Realizing time was finite, he applied the Stoic approach to decide whether he'd remain or attempt a new path as a consultant in a field that better matched his moral ideals. Initially, he dreaded the potential financial strain, worried about losing the comfortable status he'd built. But clarifying his values, he saw the chance to do more fulfilling, community-centered projects. He accepted that he might earn less or face a rocky start, but Stoic negative visualization showed him that these difficulties were not catastrophic compared to the regret he'd feel if he never tried. He made the leap, found a moderate but stable success, and discovered a renewed zest for life. When adversity arose, like a slow first quarter or a critical health check, he didn't collapse into self-reproach, but rechecked his Stoic logic, remained adaptive, and found contentment in the knowledge that he was living on purpose, not on fear. That final story illuminates what we've been saying all along. Tough decisions need not be glamorous to be meaningful. They simply call for that Stoic interplay of rational assessment, moral alignment, acceptance of risk, and willingness to adapt post-choice. Freed from illusions that safety is guaranteed or that success must be immediate, you proceed with a calm readiness that the Stoics, from antiquity to now, have championed as the antidote to anxious indecision. As we close the curtain on this exploration, let me remind you that Stoic philosophy is not dogma, but a living discipline. The secret to making tough life decisions isn't a single formula, but an ongoing practice that blends introspection, honesty about your highest values, acknowledgement of your limited control, and moral courage in the face of uncertain outcomes. Each time you face a daunting choice, you have the chance to refine this skill, to tune your mind more finely to what truly matters, and to drop illusions that only feed fear or regret. Over months and years, these decisions, some large, some seemingly small, aggregate into a life whose tapestry is marked by consistency, resilience, and a sense of quiet integrity. That is the gift Stoicism offers. Not the elimination of hardships or complexity, but the forging of a character that remains steady in the midst of them, guided by reason, illuminated by virtue, and unafraid of the unknown. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos, and if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.